Hello and welcome to Timing is Everything, a program of Care Dimensions. And my name is Mary Crowe. I'm the Director of Professional and Community Education at Care Dimensions. Today, our guest is Jon Younger, who is the owner of Assisted Living Locators. Welcome, Jon.
Hi, Mary. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Appreciate it.
So, Jon, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a North Shore guy.
Yeah.
I was born at Beverly Hospital. I grew up in Hamilton, and my parents still live in Danvers. And I'm living up in Amesbury now.
Nice. So you
North
really
Shore
are
guy.
a North Shore
Yeah.
guy. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So, Assisted Living Locators. So, tell us about this. What is that?
Sure. Well, Assisted Living Locators, what I do is I help families and their loved ones find the healthiest and safest senior living option out there. There are a lot of places to choose from, and I've gotten to know most of those places in the area, so that when I sit with a family and talk about, where they want to be, what they're interested in, what they're looking for, I'm able to help them navigate through that process of choosing and moving into.
And this is a big process.
It is. It is.
I have to tell you, with people living longer and options becoming much greater, and being in the baby boomer age, and we're in that sandwich generation, this is a huge deal. And really trying to help our parents, or even again many people themselves, trying to navigate through this is overwhelming.
It's very daunting, very overwhelming. It's an emotional time. People, it can creep up on them suddenly, or they can plan for it. And even when you plan for it, it's still emotional,
Right.
because you're leaving one place for another.
Yep, absolutely.
And that can be a challenge.
Yeah. Now this is a huge transition for people, and we'll get in. I wanted to ask you though, how did you get into this?
Oh, great question. Everybody has their personal story.
Yeah.
My story is about an aunt of mine about 7 years ago was going through the process of leaving her home, just didn't want to deal with the snow, and her health was going downhill. Nothing crazy, nothing drastic. But she had some family members who were helping her figure out where would be a good place to go. What ended up happening over a course of a 3-year period of time is she actually moved 3 times in that 3-year period.
Wow.
And it's just, you can't do that. You
Right.
want to be able to find the perfect place as quickly as you can and be able to stay there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because when you think about that, the toll that it took, not just it's on her as clearly, but also on the family.
Right.
And, transition is so hard. We get so established in our
Right.
routines, and our home is so important, and having people have to make those transitions, like you say, once is hard enough, but to have to do that 3 times in a period that short, that's too much.
Right. And what I observed during that process was there was no education going on.
Yeah.
There was nobody that was helping the family and the community facility, I use them interchangeably,
Yeah.
to understand what that family was looking for,
Yeah.
what my aunt was looking for. And so on the family side of things, they're just going in basically blind.
Yeah.
Don't know what to ask, don't know where to go,
Yeah.
don't know where to look.
Yeah.
So I just thought there must have been some way that I can just stick my nose right in this thing.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Stick myself right in the middle,
Yep.
and act as an educator liaison between the families and the communities, so that both of them understand what the expectations should be.
Right.
Because there are expectations, but nobody was talking about them.
Sure, sure.
And that's what I do, is I help set the expectations.
Yeah. People really leave this stuff till the 11th hour, don't they?
They do.
We don't plan for this stuff, and I see this all the time in our work. We don't plan for advanced illness. We don't plan for end of life. We don't plan on our aging process in terms of how we can make an environment that's going to help us to continue to be independent. So we wait until crisis point to make
Right.
these decisions, and most people, it's a crash course like you suggest, and they get thrown into this.
Right.
So it's
right.
wonderful that they have someone like you who can help them to navigate this journey.
Right. A terrific option to have someone like me on their side,
So how
holding
do-
their hand through the process.
Oh yeah. So how do people go about it? So what do they do?
Call me.
Yeah, yeah.
Find me.
Yeah.
And what happens is we'll get together, we'll meet.
Yeah.
It could be at their home, it could be at a Starbucks.
Yep.
Meet anywhere the family is comfortable.
Sure.
And we'll just go over Their financials, because it does this. Most of these assisted livings are private pay. So we'll review their finances. We'll review geographically, where do they want to live? Do they want to stay in Beverly, or do they want to go up to New Hampshire? And really importantly is the medical issues. Because depending upon a place that we choose together, it really depends upon the medical issues and what that community can offer the family and what their loved one might need. We talk about, what did they do when they were kids? What did they do? What's their work? What's their career? What are they interested in doing? And at all this time, I've spent about a year going around to all the 100 or so communities, getting to know them and understand them. So I'm thinking about 2 or 3 places. As we're talking, I'm thinking about 2 or 3 places that might make sense to offer to them. And I don't leave it right there. We'll go together.
Wonderful.
I go with the family. So I help ask questions that they absolutely don't know what to ask. And go beyond what the wonderful salespeople are talking about and the wonderful communities that are there. Dig a little deeper. Ask some questions that are pretty important to know.
Everybody assumes that all assisted livings are alike. Not true.
No, not true.
So can you talk more about that in terms of some of the things that, again, what are some of those key questions that you're asking?
Sure. So there are lots of assisted livings, and they're all wonderful in their own way. They all have different idiosyncrasies and different specialties. They have some of them, their food is wonderful. Others might not be as good, but then their care might be a little bit more, not a little bit more focused. So memory care communities, they focus on folks with memory care. Other communities have independent living, assisted living, and memory care. So I'm looking to match the person to the right place at the right time. So things to look for: cleanliness. You got to smell. Got to use your nose. But keep in mind that if there's an offensive smell, one day go back again. Because there's always accidents. You go back again and take that smell test again. Everything should be okay. Talk to the residents. Most importantly, talk to the residents. Are they smiling? Are they happy? What do they think? Look at the caregivers. Are they engaged with the family members, with the residents? Or are they in a corner somewhere just kind of kibitzing amongst themselves and not paying attention?
So that's great advice. Use your senses. So you're talking about all of your senses. And like you say, there can be any given time. Obviously people require care. So you're always going to have that. Once does not a pattern make. So, but like you say, you want to go at various times, right? And to get a feel for what that's like.
You don't have to have an appointment. The first time around, make an appointment. Tour the place with the sales director and myself. Go back in again on your own. Don't announce yourself. Go back during lunch. Go back and enjoy an activity. There's nothing stopping folks from doing that. It's highly recommended that you go back again and again, a couple of times, just to be sure you're catching everybody at different times. Because sometimes if you go on the weekend, a lot of folks are out and about doing things. So it's a little quieter. Less staff maybe.
And like you say, and it's good anyhow, because you're picking up stuff that you didn't see the first time too. This is like you say, this is an emotional situation, so you really want to get a feel, because this is a big move. So how much does this cost people to have your services come in?
My services are absolutely no cost, absolutely free to the families. I do that because families have enough to worry about. Then all of a sudden they're going to get a bill from me. That never happens. What I've done is I've got agreements with and understandings with the majority of the assisted living communities that are out there. So I liken it to a real estate broker. I get a commission from whichever assisted living my client may move into. I know there are a lot of times where it's a lower income place. I won't get compensated there, but that's okay. My goal is to make sure that my client gets into the best place where they'll be the safest and happiest, whether I get compensated or not.
Well, it's always nice too when somebody goes into it. When you told us of your personal experience, I love when people are drawn to something because of that. And like you say, often people are, and you could see how you are all impacted by that. So I think we become more empathic around
Right.
around others' experiences in this way, and how can we help in that way?
Right.
Because there's
right.
other stuff you could be doing, right? But you're not.
Right.
So you know, definitely you've focused in on this human helping profession.
Right,
So
this is what I've chosen to do.
yeah,
It's a real need.
yeah, that's great. So, there's so many, like you say, there's a lot of assisted livings out there. It's what do you find are people's responses, in terms of having to make these transitions? This is a big step. This is a big step for people coming out of a home that they've lived in for sometimes 50 years.
Right.
How does it work?
Well,
what do you see?
I see it's a lot of fear,
Yeah.
change. People
Sure.
don't like change. For folks who are just like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I want to go somewhere.
Yep.
It's still a change for them, but they're a little more accepting.
Yep.
I try to make it as easy for them as possible, along with the community folks who work there themselves.
Yep.
We try to just sit and talk about everything they're looking for.
Yeah.
And it's really about, let's talk about the food. Let's talk about the programming.
Yeah.
And then after that, after they start to ease up a little bit, then we talk about the care, because the care is the most important
Yep.
thing.
Absolutely.
And you've got the
Yeah.
big, the big chandeliers and the brand new buildings, and there's a lot of that going around out there. And we'll go in and we can ooh and ah about the chandeliers and whatever. And my favorite thing to say to the family is, "This is great, but that chandelier is not going to take care of your loved one."
That's right.
And
That's
then,
a very good
then we
point.
start talking about levels of care and all these other
Yeah. Yep.
things we have to talk
It's
about.
it's so important. So a couple of things of what you're saying. Aesthetically, that's great, right? And,
yeah.
and that is important to people. But like you say, it's not what the place looks like necessarily. It's what happens within the walls and how they're
Right.
cared for and all that. I also like when you had talked about that you really sit down to find out about the person.
Right.
This is important. Because it would be so easy to just say, you know what, this is a great place. I recommend, this, this, and this. Given choices, obviously, but it doesn't sound. It sounds more to it than that. So you're really fine tuning. It's so important. Everybody's different. So you might have somebody who, okay, you know what, I'm not a big. The food isn't a big deal. I know
Right.
with my own mother, it's like, food is like it's just a meal. That's not something that she's sitting there looking forward to every time. For other people, that's a focus.
Right. Right.
Activities are a huge deal for my mother. For other people, it's not. So, so I love how you kind of hone in terms of that for people.
Right. A big thing is location. And I've found this, especially on the North Shore. I can speak to the North Shore.
Yeah.
People who grew up in Beverly, you say Salem, they'll, I'm not going to Salem.
Yep.
It's got the old crosstown high school football rivalries.
Yeah.
Swampscott and Marblehead,
Yep.
and that's the greatest thing. That's the funniest thing.
It's so funny to watch people up the North Shore area, because really it's like, going over a bridge or going to a different
Right.
area. It's
Yeah.
like going to another country.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and people are just so alarmed about that.
Yeah.
So do you the more of the people that you take care of or you're working with, do you find that you're helping people like that are out of town in terms of they might be living locally or they're coming in to be closer to family? What is that like?
It runs the gamut, Mary. I've gotten people that call from Florida.
Yep.
That their kids are up here and they want to move up with the kids. I
Yep.
get people who are in North Shore who want to stay here.
Yep.
So that we choose the different places in Beverly or Danvers or Peabody.
Yep.
People go out of state. Actually, I've had folks that want to move. They have family in California.
Yep.
They want to go out there. I have colleagues all over the country.
Okay.
That I can connect them with.
Oh, okay.
that
So
do
you're
what
not
I
just
do.
taking you're not just meeting and caring for people that are wanting to find a place at the North
Right.
Shore.
Yeah.
You can really find a place anywhere.
Right. I can find a place. And of course, most of the folks I work with are in the area, Essex County or Middlesex County.
Sure.
But there are others who just are tired of the snow.
Yeah.
Go to Florida, go to
Yeah.
the Carolinas, go to California, Arizona.
Yeah.
And I'm able to connect them with folks who do what I do out there as well.
Yeah. You must get a lot of feedback from individuals and families then.
Yeah,
So-
it's a real joy.
Yeah.
It really is a real joy, because you just think about this, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I've had other businesses, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it is the absolute most gratifying, rewarding thing I've ever done. There's nothing like after a family moves in, you know, I'll check in with them
Yep.
for the next 30, 60 days
Yep.
just to see how they're doing,
Uh-huh.
how they're liking it. And I just get this, you know, thanks, John. You know, we never would have found this place
Yeah.
without you. And I mean, even now,
Yeah,
chills.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's my reward.
So it sounds like knowing that you made a difference in people's lives in that way.
Yes.
You know, like it said, that's more of a calling than a job, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So do you feel like that's the most satisfying part of your job, is knowing that you made that difference? Are there other parts of it that you find as rewarding?
I think finding the best place for somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
That is
Yeah.
the ultimate goal.
Yeah,
Is
really
find the best
feeling
place
like,
for somebody, and knowing I've made an impactful, positive effect in their lives.
Sure. What can be some of the frustrations in this process?
I think the biggest frustration is not necessarily people who haven't planned, but people who can't make a decision.
Uh-huh.
As I
Yeah.
said, it's a tough decision to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah.
But what I do is, because we only talk about 2 or 3 places,
Yep.
if a family wants to continue looking, then we'll go back, sit down, and say, okay, what's really going on?
Yep.
Because if
Yep.
somebody still wants to just look and look and look and
Yep.
look,
Yep.
then there's something else involved.
Sure.
And we'll try to figure out what that is. If it's fear of moving, it
Yeah.
could be, how am I going to pay for this?
Sure.
You know, all those different, leaving, you know, a familiar area into another one.
Yeah.
You know, we'll talk about that and try to get them through that.
Yeah.
So that's for people who just don't plan or wait till the last minute. That can be very challenging.
Yeah, it's just such a common theme.
Mm.
You know, like I said, it's always too soon before it's too late mentality. You know, you hear that adage so much, but it's true, isn't it? And
Yeah.
people they wait until so long. So how many of your people plan ahead, do you find, or how many of them wait until kind of crisis point?
I think most of them wait.
Yeah.
I think if I go by some of the number of folks I've placed and I've had help move in over the past 3 years, is probably about 75 to 80 different families.
Yeah.
And 2 of them were planning,
Really?
maybe 3.
Wow.
They'd call me and we worked together for about a year. But most of it is last minute, coming out of a volatile situation where
Yeah.
they're not safe to go home.
Yeah.
Very little planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think that's about? I mean, I think there's so many reasons to that,
Yeah.
but why is it that we just can't plan ahead in this way? What do you find? Are you finding a kind of a familiar theme with your?
Yeah, I think it's just the reality. You know,
Yeah.
this sudden move that you have to make, or this sudden event that happens to you.
Yeah.
Rather than being prepared for it,
Yeah.
you just don't. You want to go about your life and
Yeah.
go do stuff, go shopping, go have a nice dinner somewhere, and you're not thinking about planning ahead for yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I like I said, I see it all the time. You know, that we do it in so many areas, whether it's again around advanced illness, around end of life stuff, around again even our healthcare wishes with doing our healthcare projects. So you name it, whatever it is around this, and if it's topics that we don't want to talk about,
Right.
and again with moving, changing, people have such a hard time with that. That if they don't talk about it, it won't happen. That's not for now. That's for later.
Right.
And it's just so hard. It's just so hard for people.
Right. I do a lot of health fairs and educational programs, and I get a lot of, I don't need you.
Yeah.
I don't need you yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably from people who are in their 80s. It's not time. It's
Yeah,
not
it's not
time.
time.
Yeah.
No, it's not
So do you
time.
think we're going to be doing this, John?
Planning?
Yeah. No, saying it's not time.
It's not time. Absolutely. Every day.
Yeah, exactly, right? So we see it every day, but
Yeah.
and I see that with healthcare professionals, right?
Sure,
So
absolutely.
they're the first ones to tell you that this is what should be done. They should be having the healthcare practices and that. They're the ones that don't do them too.
Don't
So
ask them if they've done
It's just
it.
human nature, isn't
Yeah,
it?
You don't want to know.
Yeah.
You don't ask them.
Yep. So, in terms of so tell us more about do you have any, obviously respecting privacy and all that? Are there any scenarios kind of that trying to jump out in what you've done in your work, or situations that have touched you particularly in a way, or what have you?
A challenging one I had recently, and it's not a sad story, but a reality type of story of how a couple goes through this process.
Yeah.
I was working with a woman whose husband has dementia.
Yep.
And she'd been at home with him for years and years and years. She was the only caregiver. We started talking probably about 8 months before she actually made the move.
Yep.
And we talk off and on, and I'd check in with her, say, how you doing, what's going on? And, oh, I'm doing okay. You know, we have some folks coming in that do games and take care of them and stuff. And
Yep.
so what do you do when, you know, they're not there? And she's like, well, you know, I have to listen to him and I have to take care of him, and it's challenging, getting difficult.
Yep.
And I watched this progress for the 8-month period of time, to almost to the point where, and it came to the point where she called me up and said, Jon, I can't do this anymore. And she was crying and upset, and I can understand that. But she just really was at her wit's end.
Sure.
I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So we went to a couple places where he wasn't touring with her, obviously. And she liked both places. Yep. And chose one. No real, nothing outstandingly different from one than the other, but just felt more subjectively comfortable. Yep. Yep. And thought that he would be happy there, and that was her goal, is to, albeit a sad, stressful event, you know, she was able to make that decision with help. Yeah. That I just can't do this anymore. Yeah. And I've checked in with them about a month ago, and he's doing great, and she's doing great. She's with her friends. Oh, that's wonderful. Going out to lunch, taking trips to see family. Yeah. And he's just living large in his place, enjoying the activities and the friends he's made. Yeah, isn't it? It's amazing, isn't it, that sometimes as a family member having to make a move like this when somebody has such a difficult advanced illness, such as Alzheimer's or other dementia, or even other things, it can be so overwhelmed sometimes with the process or guilt or anything. And really it's one of the most loving things you can do for a person. Absolutely. So we don't look at it that way. Sometimes it feels selfish, but in fact it's really quite unselfish, isn't it? Very unselfish, because if you look at the situation, when he was home, he was just sitting in his room. Right. Yeah. You know, but when he moved into the assisted living, he's making friends. He's doing all kinds of activities. He's thriving. Yeah. Well, it sounded like both of their quality of life improved. And she certainly did. You know, she's doing a lot more knitting groups and movie going. Sure. And a little less guilty today than she was 2 months ago. That's good. And the interesting part too is that when you're in the caregiver role like that, you're not it's harder to be the spouse or to have that kind of quality time with one another. When you can take that step back, it actually can enhance that again for people. Right. You know, so it can be. Do you find that more of the do you find that you're working with a lot of couples in terms of they're going together, or are you finding that one of the people in the couple has a crisis and usually they're going individually? Normally, it's usually they're going individually, but I have worked with couples where they move in together. Yeah. Because they just want to be together. Sure. And there's enough room in some of these assisted living places where they can have a 1-bedroom, or in one case they put two studios together and busted a hole in the wall. Wow. So they had a bedroom and like a sitting area. Wow, that's impressive. So it's mostly individuals. Yeah. Well, I think that people, again, facilities, they seem to be really adapting. Like you say, all of the facilities have their own nuances, don't they? They're all different in their own right. So it's nice for people to get a feeling, like you were talking about that woman with her. It was subjective. Why that one felt right over another. So they're not all alike, so people really should have that opportunity. Right. So that's wonderful. Yeah, once they get through the whole care and questions, it really becomes a subjective decision. Sure, sure. It really becomes a subjective decision. Well, I also like that you take the time and you really sit with people to understand what some of these, because there are issues that we're not aware of sometimes that are getting stirred up, and there's the resistance and we don't identify it sometimes. Right. You know, so it's nice that you take the time so that people can work out some of those things, you know, so that they can feel maybe more lighthearted in terms of having to make such a big decision, or again, maybe helping to relieve some of that guilt or what have you. Right. So, and that's a process. Right. You know, we expect these things are going to be like overnight. It's a process. It's absolutely a process. You have many people involved. I mean, you can have 7 brothers and sisters who want to get in on the action. Sure. Too. Yep. Yeah. So there's been several times where I've gone to the house and we sat around, and I sat in the living room with them and just kind of watched the activity.
Sure, yes, yeah.
And kind of helped with the being a liaison.
Yes, yes.
Pointing out important things.
Yeah. Well, and again, that takes a lot of patience because families are complicated.
Yeah.
So being able to try to meet all of the needs, and everybody has different ones.
Right.
So that's wonderful that you're able to take that time with them too. So tell it, how do we get a hold of you? How can the audience get a hold of you?
I have a phone number.
Okay.
Let's
put that up while you're talking. Go ahead, Jon.
Phone number and website, 508-878-8878.
Great.
Easy number to remember, and the website is assistedlivinglocators.com/any Mass, as in Northeast Mass, NEMASS.
Excellent. And we'll also put let's put the Care Dimensions contact information up as well. So if anybody has any questions, or if for some reason they lost that information for you, we can also make sure that they have access to that. Or also, if you have any questions that we can help with, we'd be happy to do that as well. So, Jon, tell me. I know we're kind of running down here in terms of the time and all, but tell me, if you had to share one last gem with the audience today, what would you say to them?
I think that this kind of a decision is too daunting, and it really deserves more than just an internet search.
Yeah.
You know, you really need to use somebody like me, and I don't cost any money.
Yep. Yeah.
So why wouldn't you call me?
Right. Well, I think that's different for people, because I'm sure they're probably thinking, I can't afford a service like this.
Right.
This is way too costly. And so you're giving them a whole different perspective on this.
Right.
So, which is wonderful. Yeah. So everybody needs a hand through the journey.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you're that person.
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, we can't thank you enough for being on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me, Mary.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
This has been great.
Thank you, Jon. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Timing is Everything, and we look forward to your tuning in to our next show.
Formerly Hospice of the North Shore in Greater Boston is different in that we do more than just hospice.
It's just incredible, the services they provide when people need it the most.
So being able to offer more individualized care helps people feel more cared for.
Because it's about the patient's quality of life.
I don't think there's any place else in the Boston area like Care Dimensions.
At Care Dimensions, we'll take care of your family like you're a part of ours. Visit us at caredimensions.org.